Hey guys, in this video I want to revisit the land switch skills, also to share my thoughts on them, when to use them, and some minor changes along the way. So let's begin with the most basic switch skill for the lands, guard. There is an interesting change in Sunbreak. In the base game, it didn't really matter if you have no guard skills or guard 5. The only difference was related to the knockback after receiving the hit. However, in Sunbreak that doesn't apply anymore. In Sunbreak, if you run a guardless build, you might bleed good chunks of HP, because as it is right now, depending from the knockback, you receive a net amount of damage. In this clip, for example, both builds have basically the same defense. The only difference is that one build has guard 3 and the other one has 0. There are ways to work around this if you like to run guardless builds, but we are going to check the specifics of those later. If I had to rate this skill, regardless of this little change, I will say that it is an A tier switch skill. It is the core of the lands, and I still believe it is really useful for those starting with it. For the next switch skill we have Insta Block. This one received an important buff. It was buffed by 77%. It is much easier to activate, and there is no penalty even if the first hit doesn't land. For me, this move is A tier. It is pretty nasty once you understand the kind of moves a specific monster has. It still has its disadvantages against monsters with multiple hits, because the skill gets cancelled, but if you are able to land those hits, it's well worth it. I would recommend this one for experienced players, or if you know really well the attacks from a specific monster. The next switch skill is Dash Attack. It is a classic lands move to reposition, and quite helpful actually while hunting monsters that move all over the place. It had a minor tweak, like being able to hit a bit faster while running, and a minor increase in elemental damage from 0.2 to 0.5. It is not the best skill, but for a weapon with no movement, it can be really helpful. For me, it is B tier. Shield Charge is a much more interesting skill, however I only recommend this one for experienced players, mainly because it consumes stamina like crazy, and unfortunately the lance is a weapon that demands good chunks of stamina for several things. This move has a good synergy with different skills that we will also look later down the line. If you want to jump into a much more aggressive playstyle, then this skill is really good to knock monsters real fast. You can add some slugger and guard skills to not suffer from knockbacks, and that's it. It is another A tier move. Then we have two interesting skills, and returning to the guard topic. If you want to run a guardless build, you need to learn these skills, because it naturally has guard points, which means that even if you run a build with no guard, you can reduce a lot the incoming damage. Guard Dash is a skill that moves forward quite fast, really useful to reposition into safer places, and it has two follow-ups. You can either attack with your shield, which I don't really recommend it, or a Sheathing Thrust. Depending how effectively you use it, this skill can be extremely powerful or extremely taxing, because there is also a point where it doesn't guard attacks, so be careful while using this skill. Right now, I will say it is either B+ or A tier. Nonetheless, it is a good skill depending which kind of build you like to run. Something similar happens with the new switch skill Shield Tackle. It has a shorter move, but in comparison with Guard Dash, Shield Tackle actually hits with a shield, and it's a bit faster. Its base damage is 20 with 20 in KO and 10 in exhaust. The advantage of this move is that you can follow up with thrusts to no end. It is really useful if you want to be on top of the monster all day long. Between these two switch skills, it depends which approach you want to take. One is a bit faster and the other one is for better reposition. However, the slight advantage with Shield Tackle is that if you play offensively, you can exhaust and stun the monster, which is really easy because you can pretty much spam this move really fast and safely. For me, it is A tier, also really good for guardless builds. The next one is Skyward Thrust, extremely powerful and with minor tweaks. It is possible to guard multi-hits, and you can stack Anchorage buff with the Skyward Thrust. making it into a powerful option. On its own, Spiral Thrust may benefit from some guard points, because this move can be cancelled if you get knocked back. Guard 3 is really good in many cases, and if you know how to use it effectively, it can stack offensive guard and its own buff, dealing some nasty damage along the way. In the training room, Spiral Thrust increases the damage in around 1.094 for 10 seconds. I still believe it is an S tier. And now with Anchor Rage, you can turn this attack into something much more interesting, because Anchor Rage, as it is right now, is not dependent from guard skills. In the base game, it was heavily punished from using guard 2 to 5, but right now you can have guard 5 with no issues. It also got a slight buff. Its glow lasts for 20 seconds, in the base game it was 10. And as I mentioned before, you can stack these two glows, making it into a really powerful combination. If you ask me, I prefer to attack with Anchor Rage first, then change to Spiral Thrust and go nuts. I do it in that order mainly because Anchor Rage buff has 10 more seconds than a Spiral Thrust. Right now I will say it is another S tier for the lance. Definitely changes that have to be done. Skyward Thrust is the switch skill that I still do not like at all. With this, don't get me wrong, with a proper build it is able to deal some crazy damages. It is really useful against flying monsters as well as big ones, because you can deal over 1500 damage, but the issue with this skill is that you get open to many attacks. Against Balstrats, for example, you can get insta-carted if for some reason Balstrats decides to use its freaking beam. However, if you know in which moments you can spam this attack, it is nasty as heck. For me, it is A tier. It deals good chunks of damage, but you're vulnerable all the way. For the last two switch skills we have Twinbind and Sheathing Retrat. Twinbind change its uses in Warbox from 2 to just 1. It depends which monster you decide to use it against. It can be a solid option to move around or something quite useless. You can follow up with 3 options: an aerial thrust, dash attack or shield charge. Personally, I prefer shield charge because you can protect yourself all the way, compared to dash attack or aerial thrust. Depending how you want to synergize its uses, you can add some slugger and stun the monster with ease, along some shield tackle, so for me it is B+. You need to choose wisely against which monsters you want to use this skill, preferably monsters that move all over the place if you want to catch real fast. And last but not least, Sheathing Retrat. I just don't like this one. I believe Twinbind is much more useful because you can pretty much do the same. You can follow up with an aerial thrust, dash attack, shield charge, but being honest, I didn't find places where I was able to use it effectively. I mean, in many cases, every lance build has guard. You can use the shield charge, guard dash, shield tag, the Twinbind, some evade extender, or some other things to avoid being hit. It is a shame, but for me, it is D tier. I wouldn't really use it. If you have used it in effective ways, let me know. And that's all, folks. Right now, the lance is in a much better place compared to the base game. I hope this video is useful for all of you. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.